Hello and welcome to Your Hometown Solutions, where experts meet to discuss everything real estate from foreclosures to Feng Shui. We've got a full house today, and this is our part 2 of our interview with Gregory Weiner from the Economic Development Commission. Welcome back, Gregory.
Thank you.
And in the studios also is our favorite mortgage expert, certified mortgage planners expert in-house is Carolyn Wolf.
Glad to be back, Jean.
Welcome back, and you are the sponsor of today's show, so we appreciate that. And Jonathan Lack, my co-host. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, I'm glad to be back for part 2.
Part 2. Well, we wanted to tell a little bit about what we discussed last week, but also how our experts can play into perhaps some of the things that Gregory Weiner is going to be talking about with the EDC, and that's the Economic Development Commission. Usually if there's a C at the end of one of those acronyms, it's either commission, center, or console, and I always get them mixed up, so I always have to read what right. It is. Is it commission? Is it console? Let's talk a little bit, Carolyn, about mortgages, because we have some tips. In fact, I just gave out some tips today to someone that I was showing some property to. Is getting yourself ready sometimes on paper is important than just to go out and look at houses first. And I used that great tip that you brought up several weeks ago. And by the way, if you want more information about mortgages in more depth, go to our archives. And there's several programs where we featured Carolyn for the whole half hour, and we talked about various mortgages. But one of them was if you want to raise your credit score regarding credit cards, what do they do, Carolyn?
Thank you, Jean. And again, my name's Carolyn at Certified Mortgage.
That's right. We've got to put in your MLS number before you even
number.
Speak. Right.
268-538. Now I'm compliant.
Yes. Now you're compliant. Now you can answer that question.
One of the good tips, and it even just for people in general as far as improving their credit score, is if they have a credit limit, say of $10,000 on their credit card. If we as consumers exceed that by 30%, so if we have a more than a $3,000 balance on it, it hurts our credit scores. And right. Most of us don't know that because they don't tell us that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of an easy way for some consumers, depending on how much cash they have available, to get their balances down below a 30% limit. Don't close them, or don't concentrate on one, putting it to 0. If you have 2 or 3, concentrate on getting all 3 below a 30% balance, and that you could see a great improvement on your credit score.
So just to make sure that everyone understands that, because sometimes audio, it's tough to write these things down as you're hearing it. If I have 3 credit cards, and one of them, and they all have a $10,000 limit, and I have nothing on 2 of them, but one of them I have $9,000, that's mm-hmm. not a good thing. I need to take that, get them all down to $3,000 on that, or 30% on that if I have a $10,000 limit. Better to have $3,000 on 3 cards than 1 card with $9,000 if your credit limit is 10. Yes? No. She's making a face at me. All right, what does that mean?
I'm not exactly sure on that one, to be honest. That would be more for, credit counseling or credit card or credit bureau to answer that question.
But it would look better when you're, as far as the credit, probably the credit reporting, because
exactly.
It's under. Okay.
Yes, but I can tell you if all 3 of them have a higher balance, over 30%, work on having all 3 below 30 instead of concentrating on just getting 1 well below.
Right.
That will have a bigger impact.
Mm-hmm. So it's not always a good thing to, as you said, completely cut off the credit cards and shut them down either. You need to talk to someone like you that can kind of give the facts.
Right.
Because here's what happens, listeners, that if you go into a bank, let's just say you go into your local bank, you've got your checking account there and your savings account, and you think, well, I'm going to get the best deal here because I've been banking with this company for 20 years. They are there to offer you various services, and they don't concentrate on one particular one. So it may not be the best place for your money market, or may not be the best place for a mortgage, because they're there to offer various services, but they're limited on how you fit their scenario. So you might not be able to get a good mortgage, or even a mortgage at all, with the bank you've been banking with for 20 years. when if you go to a mortgage broker, and let's just really quickly discuss the difference between a mortgage banker and a broker so people understand that it's a completely different service.
Yes. I mean, with a mortgage broker, we are licensed and we have to be tested and fingerprinted, but we have the ability to work with multiple lenders and multiple mortgage companies. So we have a variety. Most and all banks we all have to adhere to specific guidelines, but we all have what's called overlays. So each bank has their individual specific overlays, and so a consumer might not fit with their bank's overlays. Whereas another lender or bank would say, by all means, come aboard. And that's what a broker can help a consumer do, because we have multiple lenders to deal with.
That's right. And we're going to be talking about businesses coming into the area and job growth and so forth. And one of the things we mentioned last week, but it's worth mentioning again, that if you are getting a transfer, or even if you're here and you're transferring from one job to another, what's the requirements? Let's just say if you're already here. If you're already here and you're going from one job to another, if it's in the same realm or in the same area of expertise, is that just a free-flowing process, or do they still have to look at being employed for 6 months or a year or something?
That's a loaded question.
All right.
But every individual is different. But I will say, if you are transferring from one position to another and it's the same line of work, it should be seamless. We like to see 30 days worth of pay stubs. However, everybody's different. If it's in a sales type of thing or a commissional type of position, it can take a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. So if you're also, the problem is if you're up north and you're leaving a position there and that the position down here is completely different, what is required from you that they can come down and actually qualify for a loan when they first start? They might be looking for homes before they actually start their employment.
They would have to have their employment in place with 30 days worth of pay stubs before we close. So it'd be about 45 days. And it does depend. A lot of people don't realize, too, a lot of our younger audience out there where you're just coming out of school, that counts towards employment as well, because a lot of them might think, well, I've just gotten into the workforce. But as long as you have school behind you, that counts towards your employment history.
Right. Well, we were just talking about that last week, where people in school that might be looking at Brevard County coming here. I didn't know that. I know you mentioned it before, but I guess I should say I forgot it, not that I didn't know that. That if you're in school, that still counts as almost like an employment.
Right.
record.
So if they come
good.
here and they get a job offer from one of our great companies here and they want to start looking for a home, they are ready to. They don't have to wait 2 years, 6 months. Mm-hmm. It can be right after, just 30 days after employment.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Carolyn, give your email or your website. So if someone has some questions they might want to shoot to you, and you'll be happy to answer them, or you can text Carolyn. She's readily available. She's a live person in a brick and mortar office. So you get the information from the same source every time, which I like, because some of these online mortgage companies, you just don't know who you're going to get and what state they're in and anything else.
Well, you can get us online as well. We are at www.floridalendingpro.com. My cell phone is 321-795-9103. Or you can email me at Carolyn, Carolyn, at floridalendingpro.com.
And if you'd like more information about Carolyn, some of the shows she's been on, you can go to our archives at the host page on talknetworkradio.com. You can hit our host page, Jean Newell or John Lack. Go there and you'll see the various shows that talk about mortgages, and you can get more information that way. Or you can go to yourhometownsolutions.com. We have our own website, and we have all of our contact information there, and all kinds of videos and different remodeling tips and decorating tips and things that you should or shouldn't add to a home if you're deciding to sell it. I always say we're kind of like the HGTV shows, but on radio instead. So we try to give you all kinds of tips about remodeling and so forth. Jonathan, we're going to be talking Jonathan Lack with Lack & Lack Charter. He is an attorney specializing in real estate. He also owns Waterview Realty and Waterview Title. We're going to be getting into a little bit more on next week's show as far as some of the provisions out there for people that have lost their jobs. But we're going to be talking about jobs coming into the area. But we saw this happen several years ago when we had the big layoffs from the space shuttle. I think it was about 6,000 laid off or something around that figure. More than that. And the trickle-down effect was 25 or 30,000. That bit makes a big impact on a county. And Jonathan, just in a brief couple sentences, let's talk about the Florida's Hardest Hit program, because a lot of people don't know that it exists. I know we've talked about it just about every week because we want to make sure that if you're in the situation where you have lost your job or you have started a new job but you're underemployed and you just can't make the mortgage payment or you're behind on that mortgage payment, there is help for you. Let's give a couple some information on that, on how they contact you, and maybe just another sentence or two about Florida's Hardest Hit program.
Sure. Well, of course, we want to keep the show positive with the Economic Development Commission, and Greg here with us. And the community is improving, and jobs are coming to the area, and it is a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, as you point out, back in 2010, we had this somewhat of a collapse. And as a result, it was a federally funded program, but the state of Florida implemented the Florida Hardest Hit Fund, which was designed to assist unemployed or underemployed homeowners with their mortgage. So if you've lost your job, for example, the Space Coast was a large percentage of our clientele. If you've lost your job through no fault of your own, they just closed down the Space Center, then the state of Florida would assist you with your mortgage payment while you sought reemployment. And it is a wonderful program. You can get more information off of our website, lacklaw.com. That's LACKLAW.com. There is a link to the Florida Hardest Hit Fund website. And so you can go to lacklaw.com, click on the link, and you can get more information about the Florida Hardest Hit program. Again, a wonderful program to assist those who are unemployed or underemployed through no fault of their own. But I'd like to turn the conversation to the more positive
Yes.
of the new employment,
Yes.
all the new job opportunities out there.
Exactly.
And I think the prospects for 2017 are looking much better. I know 2016 was a odd year, at least that's how it was for me in my world. But I'm very optimistic about 2017 and some of the signs I see for future economic development. And let's bring Greg into the conversation.
Yes.
and maybe he can enlighten us on some of the forecast and what he sees for Brevard County and hopefully positive opportunities.
Yes, welcome back, Gregory Weiner
Thanks
with
for
the
having me.
Economic Development Commission. Let's recap in a couple sentences what we discussed last week as far as what is an economic development commission. And I know a lot of cities, small cities, large cities have their own. There's counties that have their own. There's a state. You hear that economic development, but a lot of people don't know exactly what they do and why you want the Brevard County, the whole area as far as the county commission, as opposed to maybe a small entity or small communities economic development commission. So kind of explain the differences there, because a lot of people just don't know what how involved you really are on the economy.
Well, the EDC represents the entire county, and we work with partners at the state level, and some of the cities that you mentioned all have their own economic development arms at some level. But we're the single point of contact. We lead most of the significant deals. We are in front of those kinds of projects, finding ways to make them happy, and we work with our partners to do that. It was good I didn't know about the program Jonathan was mentioning. It sounds like a terrific program, but it is clearly a new day. And since 2010, the world has changed significantly.
Substantially.
At this point in time, all of the jobs that we believe were lost, direct and indirect jobs, probably wound up totaling something on the order of about 15,000. Direct and indirect jobs stemming from the end of the shuttle. At this point in time, we've pretty much got 98% of those back. Either they're either here now or committed to be here in the next couple of years. When we make announcements that say 500 jobs are coming, it doesn't mean tomorrow. Most of these companies ramp up over a number of years. But we have solid commitments that replace most of those jobs. So I'm not here for real estate advice, but I do have an opinion, and I think if you're thinking about buying a home, given all that is happening in Brevard County, it's not going to get less expensive.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people coming in from out of state. There's, I think, a relative shortage of certain types of houses in the what I call the